We have some informants today that we're going to be hearing from. Before we do, though, just for anybody who still needs some additional clarity, some additional information on what is this type 8 energy? Who is this type 8 person? I'm going to give you a quick rundown, and then we're going to hear from our informants what resonates with them, what doesn't, and some of the things that other types may get wrong about the type 8 energy. So right off the bat, our type 8s are striving to feel powerful and strong. That's kind of the thing that makes an 8 at the end of the day, regardless of the behavior. It's that internal motive, that internal driver of wanting to feel strong and powerful above all the others. They are avoiding anything that could put them in a vulnerable position or allow them to be taken advantage of. When they walk into a room, they tend to be focused on who has the power here, who has it, who doesn't. The person who does have the power, how well are they using it? Do I need to step in? So that tends to be the focus, and especially in a work setting, walking into a meeting, walking into a project, they tend to be very confident and very determined, hardworking, perseverance. They say that type 8s have the greatest energy of all the types on the Enneagram. And so outside looking in, that it feels very true. There's something I read about Frank Sinatra, they thought was a type 8, and they said you could feel his energy before he would walk into a room. 5 minutes before he walked into the room, he just had this energy. So that's some of what we're talking about with that 8. They just have this really powerful presence. They tend to be really direct, honest. Anything that's like beating around the bush can be very frustrating. And we're going to get into some more pet peeves in just a minute. Very passionate. Sometimes their honesty can be taken kind of as harsh. Their passion can sometimes be taken as domineering or overbearing, maybe even demanding. Our type 8s are in a center of intelligence called the body or the instinctual, which means our 8, 9s, and 1s have common themes around anger, power, control, and autonomy. And for our 8s, the dynamic with the anger is that it's typically right below the surface. They don't have a problem expressing it. They're not in conflict with it like our 1s, or feel like they can't get angry sometimes like our 9s will. It's right there, and they tend to be pretty comfortable using it. They also, like we talked about, are looking kind of for those power dynamics, wanting to be in control, what needs to be done, right? They're in that body center. So it's constantly like, what do I need to be doing versus how do I feel or what do I think, which is what the other 2 centers might be thinking. And when they come into a problem, they might be thinking, okay, it's time for me to take charge here. We got an issue. I'm coming in now. And then as far as getting things done, this type with our 3s and our 7s are in the assertive stance, which means they tend to be focused on a future goal. They want to go far. They want to go fast. They tend to be pretty big picture thinkers. They're not going to let anything get in their way. They're kind of just going to push through. And that kind of goes with that energy. They have the energy to keep something going well beyond when the rest of the team might be wearing out, might be getting frustrated. They're going to have the energy, give the motivation to keep it going. So that is a quick overview. Stephanie, and then I see Lorelei is also here. Are you ladies ready to come on and open up to be our insider informants?
Absolutely.
Let's see here. I'm going to see if I can shrink this. Oops. Okay. I'm not sure. Let's see. Here we go. All right. So just to get this started, Stephanie, I'm gonna pick on you first. Would you just do a quick intro about who you are, what you do, and how you knew that you were a type 8?
Sure. So I'm Stephanie Smith. I am a resume coach. In a former life, I was a CPA for about 10 years. And sorry, what was the last question? How I knew that I was an 8?
Yes.
Yes. Someone told me about Enneagram a few years ago, and I dove right in because I had to know. And I read the 8 and I said, oh my goodness, that's me. I've never seen a personality type test that just put me on a piece of paper, like right there. And that's how I knew.
And you can't stereotype everybody, but I hear from my 8s that they typically don't struggle. It's yes, this is me. Whereas some of the other ones, it's like, oh, I can see myself in all of these. So that's a very common experience I hear from other 8s. They read it and they're like, oh my gosh, can't be anything else. And then we have our other informant, Lorelei. Would you just tell us a little bit about what you do and how you knew that you were a type 8?
Sure. So I teach women how to grow money that makes an impact. And I think I knew really early on that I was an 8. However, I actually had a different path to finding my 8, and that's that I kind of got mistyped as a 1. So it was really interesting for me to realize that that was actually programming. Like it was actually a immature representation of my 8, was more of the people pleasing. And so my wing's a 9. So I think that that also kind of complicates things just a little bit, because that is more that peacemaker kind of wanting to tone down the aggressive directness just a little bit. But I did not really associate with the big picture idealism. So it was, you mess with my people, we're going to have a problem. But I didn't, really resonate with Greenpeace or like the big picture activism that kind of takes over, I think, when you're more of a 1. And so it was really the root for me of that vulnerability piece that made me kind of wake up and realize that, especially as a woman, I was trained to temper my enthusiasm and, speak more humbly and quietly. And that kind of, as I have grown, I'm starting to like really settle into some of the traits that you mentioned and just owning them for myself and just really embracing them and embracing who I am.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because 8s and 1s can get confused a lot. And before that, we started recording, Steph and I were talking about subtypes, like the self-preservation, the social, and the one-to-one. And sometimes self-preservation, I don't know what you are, Lorelei, but sometimes the self-preservation 8 energy can get confused for the one-to-one 1 type. And so there's all different reasons. So there's that can add to the confusion, the wings, depending on what's going on in your life. And then, like you said, how much you have been able to fully express your true self can also have an impact. 2s, especially 8 women, also are something that they will get confused. Another type that they'll get confused about. And that's kind of around that, oh, I should be more like that. And then there's also that arrow. So speaking of that, I'm going to try and toggle back to the slides with us still here. Let's see, here we go. Because I do want to talk about some other things with stress and growth. Before we do that though, Stephanie, how do you see your type 8 energy kind of showing up in the work that you do, either right now or just kind of in your career? Like, what are some of the strengths specifically that you feel like, oh yeah, I've noticed this in myself and it's been really helpful?
Yeah. So, I'll mention I also have the 9 wing, just like Lorelei. So I think that softens some of these things. And definitely reading the 8 with the 9 wing spoke to me even more than the 8, the straight 8. But yeah, I would say like one of the biggest things is sort of this confidence and specifically the determination. I have always felt that I have this tenacity that I do not see around me and a lot of other people. And sometimes, there's pluses and minuses, right? Like sometimes you're pushing forward with something that maybe it's time to let it go. But I think the confidence and the determination has really been foundational in this new role that I've taken on as an entrepreneur. And just having, because you have to create it from nothing. And I think if I had had a different personality type, it might be harder to convince myself to keep going. But I have this steadfast belief in my own inevitable success. And that is what drives me to keep me going.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'm always saying, okay, I got to tap into my 8 today. Got to tap into my inner 8. And I'll say that to others. Because at the end of the day, anybody can be confident. Anybody can be decisive, direct. It's just what comes most natural and like how intentional do you have to be? And so the gift of an 8 is that a lot of times it does come a little bit more just natural. And so it's going to kind of flow. I'm curious if you would be willing to share any specific challenge or challenges that you've noticed from the 8 energy that has impacted your entrepreneur career or just kind of overall life in general.
Sure. I do have a very clear vision for how things should go, if you will. And just in terms of life in general, I would say that can be tough when you have other people in your family who have a different vision or different priorities. And so I have to be careful that I'm not steamrolling other people, especially, the personality types in my household that are more willing to just sort of go along to not rock the boat. And then I also have some other 8s in my family. And so we can butt heads sometimes. And so having to be the one to sort of, as the adult, be the one to sort of realize this is not the hill to die on and it's going to be okay, and to let go of that vision or that direction and to hand over the reins. It's been a lot of personal growth, shall we say.
Yes. And we're going to talk just a little bit more about that in the next slide. Lorelei, I'm curious for you, what about the strengths that you have noticed in yourself from some of these 8 qualities or the energy of the 8?
So I think so much of my growth has really been about, I know I came across something that I was reading about the Enneagram, and it was like 8s, when they're really healthy, take that 2 energy and they turn into these very like magnanimous people. And so taking that keyword of magnanimous, which is like such a mouthful, is just, I don't know, I guess the energy of that word just really resonates with me. And so really taking the drive, the ambition, the passion, all of that sort of really strong, fiery energy. And rather than lighting it up even more, realizing that we want to kind of like soften and like open up to more ways of adding warmth to it. And just realizing that like my sharp tongue can be received by others in not such a great way, but that same energy can be expressed if I just add some of like that cooling, more warm energy behind it and just soften it just a little bit, and it can be received in such a powerful way. And I think that that's really been my growth process, and is leaning on these traits of mine, which are extremely powerful and I love them to pieces. However, in working with others, I have to realize that everyone's different. And I think that that's been the biggest takeaway for me, is understanding and appreciating who I am and what I bring to the table, while also leaving space for others to do the same.
Okay, I'm going to ask a question, and whoever wants to answer, feel free to jump in first. But one of the, we talked about kind of the core fear, or the thing that 8s tend to want to run away from the most, is anything that would put them in a vulnerable position, allow them to be taken advantage of. But Stephanie, I know that you're on your entrepreneur path. Lorelei, I know you are as well. And putting yourself out there, posting your opinion, sharing content, putting things for sale can be very vulnerable. I'm curious how, and this is not something that is just specific to 8s, right? We can all not want to put ourselves out there to be vulnerable and open up to criticism. But just curious for those of us who are also looking for ways to put ourselves out there, or kind of moving through that fear, has there been anything that has helped you kind of mitigate or navigate through some of the fears around being vulnerable, specifically on this entrepreneurial journey?
Sure. So I think honestly, when you posted those slogans, and I think Stephanie, you responded to this too, and like, you just do it.
That's me.
So I think that that's ultimately what it comes down to, at least for me, of like, at some point you just got to jump. right? You got to take the leap. And my spirit animal is this pony, this miniature pony. It was a meme like 1,000 years ago, but it's in a barn, and it like snowed, and it's this little ledge, and it's like running around in the barn, like trying to get up, like the desire to like jump because it wants to go play in the snow. And you just see it like pacing and pacing and pacing, and finally it leaps, and then it's like jumping up and down because it's so happy that it did it. And I was like, yeah, that's the 8. like, yes, I did it. Of course I did it, you know? So anyways, I think it's the Nike slogan. You just got to do it. You got to take the leap.
I would agree with that. I think there's sort of 2 sides to the vulnerability for me. So one is, sort of that emotional vulnerability, right? You put yourself out there, you're putting your thoughts, your ideas, like your credibility, all these things out there on the line. And you're saying, this is what I have to share. And I deserve to say this and to be heard, and someone may disagree with that. And for me, I have always maintained a very clear boundary between personal and professional. And that has helped me in this area too. I don't put things out there into the universe, if you will, that are deeply personal about my family or myself. So everything that's out there, yes, it's me and I'm speaking to it, but it's fair game. And I have a policy. I don't take it personally. Like, everyone is allowed to have a disagreement and a different opinion. And it is not about me. It's about this idea that I put out there, or this person that I am showing up as. So that's one side that that's how I've overcome that. The other side is, I very much identify this. I do not want to be controlled. I do not want to be under someone's thumb. And, it's a little scary to go out there and be suddenly solely responsible for your own income, right? There's no paycheck coming in. So for me, having a partner that also has a paycheck coming in and sort of, contributes to the household, and that's a big piece of our home is huge, but also, and I don't know if this is an 8 thing or if it's just a me thing, so I'd be curious to hear what you have to say, Lorelei. But for me, knowledge is power. When I have a fear, I will research the daylights out of something. And once I understand it and I know it, it's just about implementing. I believe as strongly as I mean, it's a conviction. I know it and I can do it, and I will do it. And it might happen today or in a year, but I will do it. And so falling back on that understanding and that knowledge is my way forward in sort of this cash flow vulnerability, if you will.
Oh, I love that. Cash flow vulnerability is good. Anything to add to that, Lorelei?
Yeah, I think that the real knowledge is power for certain. And I think some of it too that I've realized on that journey is that I've had all the knowledge in the world. However, I get in front of a doctor, I get in front of a boss, I get in front of somebody who has great power over me, and my sharp tongue does not do me justice. So it is really about understanding the knowledge that I'm bringing and understanding the ideas, as well as realizing that if I go full bore, push back, I'm not going to get what I want. And so it's around taking the energy and the passion to have that information to protect my vulnerability, but then realizing that I also have to modulate my behavior in order to create real influence. And the combination of the passion and the drive and the ambition and the seeking behavior that 8 brings, and coupled with the knowledge, is a real powerful medley, as long as it's expressed well, I've found. And so that's been a real growth for me, is realizing how to actually create influence.
So well said. So well said. And so I'm going to bring up the slide again, and we've kind of indirectly talked a little bit about this already, actually. So feel free to fill in the gaps, or if anything I didn't cover or anything feels off to you, let me know. But for the 8 energy, each type has 2 connecting types. We have our wings, but then we also have what Enneagram teachings will say is our stress or our growth or integration or de-integration arrow. And for the 8, which is really interesting because you both just kind of touched on this, they have an arrow to the type 5, which is known as the investigator, the observer. They're a head type, very much a head type. And this is known as the 8's stress arrow, but also they can tap into that 5 energy in a really healthy place, like the two of you were just talking about, or just kind of that stereotypical place, or potentially a really stressed out type 8 or type 5 energy. And sometimes they will look, this is also called the supporting arrow, because type 8s, with that kind of fear of vulnerability and all the different types of vulnerability, will look to be supported and guarded with the intellectual retreating into their heads. And type 8s can be very, or not type 8s, type 5s can be very emotionally detached and kind of closed off. So then there you have that wall. You don't have to worry about being taken advantage or opening yourself up to others. And then there, on the flip side of that, the neglected type, or sometimes known as the growth type, is that type 2. And sometimes it's called neglected because type 2 is striving to feel connected. And when you're connecting with others, you do open yourself up for the potential to be hurt, to be taken advantage of, to be betrayed. So that's sometimes why they say it's neglected. But ironically, that is the very energy that the type 8 can really pull from to grow and become powerful and strong through recognizing vulnerabilities, powerful and strong through connecting with others. So just out of curiosity, is that something that you guys have explored on your own Enneagram path? Anything resonating? Any specific examples jumping out at you from either the stress, how stress kind of shows up, or from some of the growth work that you've noticed in yourself?
I would say both, honestly. When I'm stressed or when I'm seeking to understand something, I mean, I got 20 books from the library. Like, I'm reading it. I'm finding it. I also think it's a growth area of, looking to other entrepreneurs, and just, I'm always watching, like, oh, they did that and that seemed to go well. How can I incorporate that? Like, very, information gathering. And then on the other side, I don't know if it's a type 2 or a type 9, which one it is that's sort of playing in, but Lorelei, you talked about the softening and the influence and things like that. I have noticed over the years, it's taken me a really long time to notice that this is a unique thing. But I have a very strong ability to see things from other people's perspective and to emphasize and to connect with them while talking with them directly, to connect with sort of the emotional side of where they're coming from, to then, I don't know if it's influence or support or whatever the end goal is. Usually it's support, but to give support in a way that someone can hear it based upon where they're coming from. And I'm not sure if that's a 2 or a 9 that's showing up, but I don't know.
Just to add, I think for me, it's really around accepting help, because I have always felt like invincible. It's me against the world, put myself on an island. I'm the only one who can do it. Like, kind of that sort of the less mature 8 energy, where it's like, it's all about me all the time. And once I became a mother in particular, it was game over. I could not do it myself. And it's just the level of complexity in my life became to the point where it was a really difficult turning point for me to open myself up to help, because that meant that I was vulnerable. That meant that I wasn't able to do it all. And, what did that say about me? And I had to start relying on other people to support me in ways that I was really accustomed just to doing myself. And so that, I think, has really served me on this entrepreneurial journey as well, because I walked into it knowing that I wasn't going to be able to do this myself, and really finding people who I could partner with, who I could have great conversations with, like you two ladies, and just building that community where I can be seen and I can connect and we can grow together, has really just been life-changing for me. And social media and like LinkedIn has been a huge part of that, and the coffee chats and just having conversations. And like Stephanie said too, like just kind of watching what other people are doing and realizing that it's just not all about me all the time, and that there are so many other things to do out there and people to talk to and ideas and perspectives. And I think that's really where I've been at lately, is just realizing in particular that I can't do it all myself as much as I'd like to.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because one of the themes of the body center is forgetting yourself. And for an 8, that tends to mean forgetting your physical limits and just like natural human limitations that you can forget. And I'm glad you mentioned that. It's just a reminder for us all. I'm going to have to cough for just a second. So I'm going to pause this 1 second. Okay. I want to talk about pet peeves, and specifically so we've talked about your experience as a type 8, and I know there's so much more to share. There's so much more to get into, to dig into. We're just scratching the surface here today, but I'd be curious now to kind of shift the focus on, from your perspective, what should those of us who don't resonate with the 8 energy, what should we know about getting along with you, communicating with you better, working, collaborating with you? And I'm just going to run through a list of pet peeves that might stir some conversation, and you can agree, you can disagree, or say, yes, that annoys me because I need this instead. So these are not across the board 100% true 100% of the time, but tendencies of a type 8, how they tend to get kind of put off at work, is when they recognize kind of any sort of like timidness in others, kind of like that just do it energy. Like, let's just do it. What are we waiting for? Beating around the bush, being indirect, any time that they feel like they're being controlled, someone's trying to take control of them. When people bring problems to them, but then don't offer solutions, can feel very annoying to a type 8. That indecisiveness, kind of that paralysis analysis, 8s will kind of, the saying goes that they'll shoot and then aim, not the other way. And so, right, each of these things, like there's a lot of positive about it, and then there's some things where you can get in trouble. And then kind of that brutal honesty sometimes can be like, yes, we just need to be honest here. But then also, especially as a leader, maybe as somebody who's working with clients, kids, just friends, family, like, sometimes, we got to kind of also be thinking, gosh, how is this going to be perceived? Or, what do they need also on the other end of that? So out of curiosity, and Stephanie, I'll start with you. Is what comes up as maybe a pet peeve that really stands out here, maybe that we didn't cover, that others should know about your experience as a type 8?
Yeah, there are a couple on here that really resonate with me. The being micromanaged. I mean, I think back to the most stressful points in my life and my career, and it was because I was not, just given a task and allowed to run with it. That's very stressful to have someone looking over my shoulder. The not being direct with me. Like, I understand if I don't need to be direct with someone else, but I need the facts. Like, I can figure out what to do with it when you give me the bad news, but don't string me along for 3 days because you're afraid of how I'm going to react, or you don't want to acknowledge that the ship's going down or whatever. Like, we need to deal with it, so I need to know. So that'll drive me nuts. And then the other thing is the indecisiveness in others. When it's drawn out. I have one friend who asks for help all the time, and we're talking months of input, and I can't give input anymore because nothing ever happens. And then finally, the others messing with my team members. I don't know if it's a sense of loyalty or what it is. Sort of like Lorelei was talking about, like, I can't get on board with saving the dolphins as much as I love them, but if somebody messes with somebody that even tangentially related to, it's a smaller circle kind of thing. I have a very strong sense of justice and injustice, and would very much stand up for, someone in my circle or my corner or, close by, if I felt like they were being attacked in a way that was not fair. So those are the ones that jump out to me. I've been curious to hear what Lorelei has to say.
I am too. I'm just going to add, we had Stacy share bureaucracy drives her crazy as a type 8. And as a type 7, I relate to a lot of that with the micromanaging as well. So I feel you on that, maybe for different reasons, but I feel that. Lorelei, what about you?
So everything that Stephanie said, And I think like the number one thing for me is directness. Like just speak what's on your mind. Like the sugarcoating is like a real issue for me. And Stephanie, I'm just going to share this like brief aside, but Stephanie and I had this amazing coffee chat and we were, talking. And she's like, hey, can I just give you some feedback? And I was like, yeah. And so she spoke her mind and I was like, oh my God, like this woman gets me. Like, and I was like, thank you. Like, it was just like, I haven't had a chance to formally thank you, Stephanie, but it was so wonderful to have that connection because that is near and dear to my heart. Just tell me what you want to say. Like, just speak your mind. Let me know. Be direct. So many times it is, well, I don't want you to take this the wrong way. I don't want this. And I won't. Like, I don't like, I don't know, tough skin, like thick armor, like whatever it is, or it's just like, don't take things personally, as Stephanie mentioned before. So it's like, just let me know. Like, let's just have a conversation. To that end, passive aggressive behavior isn't on here, but that is like a nails on chalkboard. So I think that's the only other thing I would add is that it goes along with just being direct, right? So if you have a problem, let me know. If you have an issue, let me know. If things are going great, let me know. Like, it's all good. And I would prefer to have a conversation.
And I think this is great for all of us to hear, because I think that a lot of times politeness gets equated to kindness, but I am learning myself that directness, honesty, can be incredibly kind, even though it may not feel like nice at the time, and it may even feel a little uncomfortable. You can have such a more productive and really more meaningful relationships if you're willing to go there. I know that's a work in progress for a lot of us as well. So just thank you for eights for bearing with us. Hopefully you can work with us on that. As we start to wrap this up, I'm curious, and Stacy or anybody else who's watching this, there's a lot of reductionness that can come out from any tool, but with the Enneagram, you see like the one-liner memes here or there, or when you read a book, you think, oh gosh, okay, all eights are this. And there's a lot of complexity because we're human beings, and this by no means represents us as a whole human being. I'm curious, either of you who want to answer this, are there things that you think we get wrong, like common stereotypical language or descriptions of the type 8 that you think, here's another way to look at this, or here's been my experience and it hasn't been that? Anything that you think we might get wrong about the type 8 energy?
Yeah, it's been really difficult for me, and it's been a growth process to really share, but I've got a heart. And I don't like to show it. And how I express that heart energy gets kind of twisted sometimes and a little bit mucked up, because that vulnerability, like that soft, squishy center, is still really uncomfortable. And so when there is directness, when there is, kind of aggression, or when things don't get received well by somebody else, I take full responsibility for that. And I'd love you to know that I actually really do care. That's why I'm saying something. That's why I'm putting the energy into it. And I'm sorry if, it doesn't come across the way I intended. And usually I take responsibility and try to make amends when it doesn't land well. But I think the big misunderstanding is that eights kind of have this very harsh, driven, going to steamroll everyone. And I absolutely feel that sometimes I can do that, and I have to really keep that in check. But it's coming from a place of, I care deeply, and I'm trying my best. And sometimes it doesn't come across the right way, but underneath it, the heart is there. So I think that's like the one thing I'd love for others to take away, is that it can sometimes not look that way, but I really do care.
I'm going to echo what Lorelei says. I mean, I think of things in my personal life, things at work, and, I have those walls. I have those emotional walls, and they are all built to protect me. but they're walls around something that's under there. And I think it can look kind of strange sometimes. Like, I always tell people, like, I'm the person you want in your corner in a crisis, because, I mean, my kid falls down and breaks his arm, which has never happened, but like, I'm literally not even going to freak out. I'm assessing the situation. I'm moving forward, and then I'll go cry later. But like, I am on the ball, but it probably looks terrible from the outside. Like, do you care about your child, kind of thing? So, the energy is there. There is this capacity for all of these softer, deeper feelings. But I only share them really with people that I trust deeply, because I think ultimately the underlying fear is that you would turn that vulnerable side around and somehow come back, and I will pay for this somehow. Like, I think that is the underlying fear of sharing the emotions. And so it's almost second nature to kind of keep that closer, play it closer to the chest, I guess. But yes, I would echo all of what Lorelei says.
And Stacy had also shared, she said, lack of emotions is kind of a misconception. She is full of them. So just kind of reiterating what you all said. And, the types are less, personality types and more kind of strategies, coping mechanisms. And so you have to also remember why is this my go-to tendency, whether you're a 7, you're an 8, for yourself. And then also, we're not going to get into, inner child work today, or that's not something that necessarily comes up in the workplace, but just remembering, there's something underneath that, like you said, Stephanie. And, so I appreciate you all being vulnerable to share that. Anything else as we start to wrap up? I would love, Stephanie and Lorelei, for you to tell us where we can find you online, for anybody who wants to say, oh my gosh, you were reading my mind. Let's connect. Let's have an 8 party or whatever. I need help writing a resume or with money. Let us know where we can find you. And then anything else about Type 8, the Enneagram personality, that you want to share to kind of make this interview episode feel complete.
I guess I just share one last little tidbit. Watch the burnout. If you're an 8, just as you had mentioned before, like kind of turning away from our own body's needs, that has been the biggest lesson learned, is that if you're an 8 and you're hitting work hard, you're working really hard, there's a really exciting project going on, and you are dedicating that energy, make sure you take time after it's complete to rest and recoup, because that has been, especially as I've gotten older, the biggest lesson I'm still learning, still work in progress, is that I actually do need to not go full bore all the time. I just can't do it anymore. So I think, like, to sum this up, make sure you take time to rest. Make sure that you watch the burnout. Make sure that you are using that 8 energy to have the conversations with your manager about balancing workload and making sure that it's appropriate for you and your life situation. Because I think that was the biggest takeaway, is, once again, I thought I could do it all. But when I really just needed to have that conversation and rebalance workload to help make sure that I wasn't getting burned out.
Okay. I love a good book recommendation and a good movie recommendation in this crowd. So, and then where can we find you online? Where do you hang out the most? What do we need to know about that?
For me, I am at sustainablewealthforyou.com. So I own Sustainable Wealth. And like I said, I help women grow their money to make an impact. And so I really show up on LinkedIn a lot. You can find me posting Tuesday through Thursday. And I talk about mindset, how to make money, and really like shift your mindset, but also the how-tos, the practicals of how to make money, and keep it and give it. So it's kind of all encapsulated in my money ecosystem, which will be launching in January. And it's to help women redefine their relationship with money, because we are often seeing so many power words around money, and I really find that they don't necessarily click with women. So I don't want to beat the market. I don't want to crush debt. I don't want to go to war with my money. I actually want to co-create with it. And so the money ecosystem is all about learning how to have that relationship with your money.
I love that. I love that so much. That's kind of like that rebel energy of the 8 for a good cause, the rebel with a cause energy right there. So love that. Okay. And then Stephanie, what about you? Where can we find you? And then any closing thoughts?
Yeah, so I am at refinedandreadycareers.com. Also on LinkedIn, I do a lot of posting as well about resume tips, interview tips. And then also I post a lot about raising entrepreneurs, because my daughter, who is also an 8, has followed along in starting her own little business. And I'm learning things along the way and guiding her through that. So those are the 3 things that I share about. My LinkedIn profile is Stephanie Smith CPA. So that's how you can find me on LinkedIn. And yeah, as far as the work that I do resume and interview coaching. I help people write powerful resumes so they can go in and get their next big step in their career. And then things that I would add as far as just last minute thoughts on being an 8. I like what Lorelei said about focusing on rest. I personally have found it very hard to rest. And one of the ways that I have done that is to vary where I'm putting my energy. So it's very easy to get caught up in that project at work, or to get caught up in this like one big centralized thing. But to get into, I mean, I don't know, I do sewing. I like to, do all sorts of like cooking and food preservation, and it always feels productive. And to me, that's important, to just kind of learn new skills, do fun new things, like maybe meet new people, but they're relaxing type of energies. Gardening, I mean, it has a purpose. I like things with a purpose, but go outside and be in nature and like fill your cup that way. So that would be my encouragement. And then also to find support in community, because I'm a recovering lone wolf, and it's the same thing. Parenthood just knocked me right off of that pedestal, and just building my support network and seeing value in what other people bring to the table, and being willing to let others help me, and seeing the value in the reciprocity of sharing this load that we're all carrying, this wonderful load, but it is a load to be carrying children and everything that comes with raising them and being responsible for them. So those are sort of my 2 takeaways.
Okay, I'm going to say, I loved your post about your daughter's sign, entrepreneur sign.
Thank you.
I showed my boyfriend the other day. I was like, this is so creative. And then you both touched on the rest thing. And what I will say, just kind of as closing words here, is that the more that you know about yourself and your style, then it's, like what advice to take in and what advice just isn't going to work for you. Because like you just said, Stephanie, your rest isn't necessarily zoning out, watching Netflix. That might be rest and growth for somebody else. But for somebody who has just a ton of energy all the time, your rest is maybe just not working, but being like an active rest, exactly what you said. And so it's like, okay, I know what I need. I know what's going to work for me and what isn't. So that's one of the things I love about this, is you can start to kind of build and strengthen your filter for what advice you allow to come in and what one you kind of start to ignore. So next week, we're going to get into the type 9 energy, and we have some informants lined up for that one. That'll be really fun.